Hey, everybody, and welcome back to an episode of Church Girl, etc., the podcast. Just to preface this episode, you will hear sounds in the background, and that's because all of my kids are wide awake. So, bear with me. But I mean, hey, it's a part of my life. So, yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. Whoa. Whoa. Yeah.
Where have I been lately? The month of February was quite busy because we were in the middle of homecoming at work. I work for an HBCU, but our university does not have a football team. We have basketball. So homecoming is centered around basketball. That is why our homecoming is in February. That is why I was missing in action. Okay. Then came March, and that was MEAC season. So we had to travel to the MEAC tournament. And that was a pretty decent experience. My first time going to MEAC. Fun for sure. Got a chance to see my mom. So I'm always excited about that. So that was a pretty good time. However, on the way back, I had gotten a phone call from the cousin, a cousin of one of my dearest friends that I didn't answer right away because I thought maybe she was calling me by mistake. I thought she was calling me by mistake. So, yeah, I didn't call her back right away. And plus, I was still traveling. So, that was that. However, I did end up calling her back at some point that Sunday evening. Um, once I got home and got settled that same night. And that phone call rocked my world a little bit. So we're gonna get into grief in this episode. I want to dedicate this episode to my friend, my sister, Shayla Smith, who is one of my, if not my oldest, like my longest standing friend. Like she's been my friend for almost 30 years since I was 9 years old. You do the math. Okay. It hasn't been 30 years, but almost 30 years. So, age wise, I'm somewhere pushing 40. At some point, I'll be pushing 40. Anywho, she and I have been friends. We have been friends all that time. So to get a call that she was no longer with us was a shock for sure, especially considering she was not sick or any of those things. A shock for sure. A shock for sure. So this episode is close to my heart for that reason, and it is dedicated to Shayla, who I feel like is side eyeing me from heaven, child. Like, girl, what do you better not cry? It's how I feel. That's probably what she would say to me because Shayla was a person who loved to laugh and smile and enjoy life and have fun and all of the things. So, yeah. So, let me see. Let me share a memory, if I can. A lighthearted memory. No, this may not be so lighthearted, but I was riding the other day past our old street, right? So Shayla lived on a street over from me. I met Shayla when I was 9 years old. I moved in with my dad because my mom had just moved to Virginia and I was supposed to go with her. It was so close to the time when school was about to start. So I just went with my dad, and the plan was for me to go and move with my mom the very next school year. But I loved my new friends so much, I didn't want to go. And Shayla was one of those friends. And so she lived a street over from us. Like, I could walk out of my backyard, walk down a little bit, and then go into her backyard. Right. So I was riding past my old street and told my husband, like, babe, you remember how I told you that this was my old street? Well, me and Shayla fought on this on this grass right here. It was a church, y'all. A church lot at the end of the grass, at the end of the street. It was just a grassy field. Why were we fighting? Okay. At like 10 years old. And ended up being friends like 3 days later. And that's how it would go. Like, we would, at that age, we had gotten into a fight. They teamed up against me. We teamed up against other people. Like, it was a mess. But that was that was a part of being a kid. When you were in elementary school, like, people would be your friend 1 second and then not your friend the next. So, but we had so many good memories. Just being, we've literally gone through everything in life together, from growing up in school to having children to, like, been through we've been through a lot together. Um when Shayla was 15, she lost her mom. Um and that was a tough time. That was a tough time for her, for sure. And I watched my friend still, even in the moments where she was having a really, really tough time dealing with the passing of her mother, I still watched her be um, pretty strong, right? I don't think that at that age she understood the weight of what it meant to lose her mom. And as she grew up and got older, she started to learn those things. Um, and so there was some trial and error, like with anybody in life, there was some trial and error. Just hers was a little different based on what she was dealing with. So fast forward to now, not having her here and her having a 16-year-old daughter. For me, it puts me in a space where I feel like I owe it to her daughter to make sure she's okay, because she would do the same if it was me or my kids. So that is a part of this process, this grieving process, that I definitely wasn't prepared for, right? And I understand that grief is different for everybody, but this one hit different. Like people say, this one hit different. I'm typically a person who can handle grief, because I feel like in most cases when I have lost somebody close to me, I've been able to prepare for it. But never anything like this sudden. I did have a friend who was very close to me who unfortunately left in a way in which I wish he would have talked to somebody first. And so I spent the whole year being angry. I spent the whole year being angry with him. So I didn't even get a chance to grieve the way that I probably would have had the circumstances been different. In this situation, because it was so sudden and she wasn't sick, but yet it was a natural cause, it's different. It's different, and it's been tough. It's been rough. Grief shows up in so many different ways. And I wanted to talk about grief specifically because it's something that I think typically in church, like we just try to pray it away or shout it away or give it a scripture. Or I'm not saying that any of those things are not good. I am saying that in the process, I found myself not wanting to hear that at the moment. I don't want to hear that every moment. And I think that God understands that. I feel like God, because He created us the way that He did, I feel like He understands that I may not be ready to pray at a certain moment, or I may not be as willing to crack my Bible open at the time. Doesn't mean that I love Him any less. It just means that I'm having a rough time and I got questions, Jesus. I have questions, okay? Um, but grief shows up in some ways that are unexpected. So for me, one moment I'll be like laughing and joking. Like I told you, I was riding down the street just laughing about the fact that we were fighting. And then another moment, I can be thinking about it and I'll just get like, it'll make me sad. Just the thought of not being able to pick up the phone to call her sometimes will make me sad because I would pick up the phone like most times if something happens with somebody we went to school with, I pick up the phone to call her like, girl, did you see it? And not being able to pick up the phone to call her is crazy. It's crazy to me. Like, girl, why are you not available so you can take my call? So it shows up in so many different ways. You could be watching something that triggers a memory. Like I we were watching Bad Boys 2 and I text her the week before she passed and was just saying like, girl, remember we went to the movies to go see this? She was like, oh my gosh, I forgot all about that. And so now when it comes on, because Lord knows it comes on TV more often than not. When it comes on now, it's like, dang, you know what I mean? It's just, it's, yeah, it's something. And it's so crazy because sometimes when you're grieving, people will, um, force you to be strong or want you to be strong, especially in a church. Like the first thing they go for again is, you know, you got to pray about it and oh, it's going to be all right. And it was their time. We get all of that as believers in Christ. We get all of that. I've been in church since conception. I get it. I know that it's all in God's timing. That does not take away the the pain and the sorrow at the time. Those things take time. And so it creates this sometimes this tension. For me, I know it's created this tension between my faith and my feelings, right? Because I am in my feelings, but I know my faith is like, Brianna, you know better. And you know that there's a better life after this. So don't be so stuck in your feelings that you miss the faith. And that is what has been the fight, if I can call it that. Because I still trust God, right? I still love God. I trust him. I know his plan is better than mine and anybody else's for that matter. It just doesn't always make it easy. It doesn't always make it easy. So that's something I am working on. And to be quite honest, that can trigger some some feelings of grief as well, as far as I am concerned, because your faith does not cancel out grief and feelings. God created us human. Like clearly he knows that we're gonna feel away, you know, especially when it's somebody that is dear to you. Um, but one of the things I love about God is that God, even when you're upset, he will meet you there. He'll meet you in your pain, and he'll sit with you. And even when you're upset and you're feeling away about his plan, because this is his plan, he will sit there and wait for you to pull yourself together and be like, hey, okay, you ready for me yet? Are you ready to be open to the fact that I want to comfort you? Because I'm here for you in all way. Like I'm always there. So when you're ready, I can you tag me in, coach. I feel like sometimes that's how God be working with us. Like tag me in, coach. I'm ready. I'm here. Like Lamar Jackson and John, like he like I want to keep going. I'm going for the fourth down. Like he be ready all the time. And we just be tripping sometimes. The whole time he's just waiting on us. He's literally waiting on us. So I think that some of the ways that he meets us is, of course, through prayer. So even though we don't necessarily, or I can only speak for me, even though I don't necessarily want to sit in prayer all the time, and I have moments where I don't feel like it. I think that it is important sometimes to push through that, to push through those feelings, because typically when you finish praying, I know for me, I can only speak for me. When I'm done praying, I feel lighter. I feel lighter. I mean, it doesn't happen instantly as you're going, but when I'm done praying, I feel like okay, I can I can breathe a little lighter. I can breathe a little easier. I feel a little better. Um, and so it is imperative to to pray even when you don't feel like it at times. And trust me, I had moments where I don't feel like it. But it's always worth it. It's always worth it because it's always worth it because my my plan is not God's plan. And God hasn't done anything to fail me yet. So why not trust him? And I can literally go to him with anything that I'm feeling, anything that's going on, and he's going to take care of it. So it's always worth it. I think another way that God shows up for us in grief is through therapy. I always say you can have Jesus and a therapist too. Okay. Therapy is very important for people, especially I think in a situation where you are going through grief. Being able to talk out your feelings, especially if you feel like there's nobody you can talk them out with. In my case, I have been able to talk through my feelings and work through my feelings with my husband. He's been extremely helpful in working through where I'm at, and he allows me to feel and to be. So I guess that would be considered like community, right? Like not necessarily therapy, but it's therapeutic to talk to him. But he's a part of my village. He's a part of my community. Being able to talk to my family and my friends who know how much I love that girl has been extremely helpful to me. And I can't say how much I appreciate them, because I would never stop talking. I would never stop talking about it. Um, but I do want us to do a better job at handling grief in the church. I want us to do a better job at it. Don't just try to shout over it. Don't just try to pray it away. Don't just try to throw a bunch of scriptures at it. Like, really sit, allow yourself to feel and be present in the moment of the grief. Don't live there though. I would say don't live there. I would say definitely apply all of God's pressure, okay? Apply all of the things so that you don't live there, but also allow yourself to feel. Give yourself some grace, because it can be tough. It can be very, very tough to maneuver. So feel all the things. Feel all the things, but don't sit in it for too long, because it's bad enough. Grief is not something that just goes away. I was just saying the other day, Mark, 10 years since my maternal grandmother passed. Both of my grandmothers passed 10 years ago, a few months before I got married. Tough. And it still hurts. It doesn't go away, because there are so many things I wish I could pick up the phone and call my grandmothers for and ask questions. But it's life. It's a part of life. So you don't live there. You get sad sometimes. You just don't sleep in it. You can't. You gotta keep you gotta keep pushing, right? Um I think the other thing I want to express is, while you're grieving, you should still be able to live. I think that's one of the reasons why I always say, like, don't sit in your grief so much so that you forget to live and enjoy life. And don't feel guilty about it, because sometimes people make you feel guilty if you lose somebody and then you're laughing, or you lose somebody and then you still got to enjoy life, because you're still here. And the enemy would want nothing more than to have you so bound up in grief that you can no longer breathe. If he could suffocate you with that thing, he would. And I'm sure that gets it can be one of those things that sweep the rug from under your feet, that pull the rug from under your feet, that can just mess you up so bad that you don't know what the next 2 minutes are gonna look like. But you have to still live, because guess what? All of us have purpose. And if you're so hung up on a situation, regardless of what it is, you can't fully live out your purpose, because your mind is so focused and stuck on the loss versus what God is trying to show you through it. I learned a long time ago that everything is spiritual. Even when you don't want to hear it, when you don't feel like believing it, everything is spiritual. So you have to look at it like, okay, God, so what is it that you're trying to show me in this grief? And how can I use it toward what it is you want me to do, the will for my life? I think when you start looking at it that way, it will help you to continue to live out your own life and do all of the things, right? Um, because I think it shifts your perspective when you think about when you think about losing someone, like in my case, losing Shayla so suddenly has caused me to, number one, be like, okay, I'm still here because there's more, like the song says. I have to continue to move because there's purpose. Shayla, one of the things that I loved about my friend is she was so supportive, and she would always encourage me when it came to church girl. And one of the things that I said was, one of the things I said to my husband was like, Shayla would want me to keep going with church girl. She would want me to keep going with church girl. She always talked about how proud she was. She always talked about how proud she was. Girl, okay. She would be like, girl, stop crying. Um, she always talked about how proud she was of me and how thankful she was that I would always check in with her when it came to her relationship with Christ. And it's something I do unconsciously. Like I talk to my friends about God all the time. Like that, it's not a secret that I love Jesus, right? But even when you don't know that people are watching, they are watching. And one thing I know about Shayla is that she was always striving to be a better person. And she was always striving to have a relationship with God. She didn't always know if, or didn't always feel like she was doing the most, that she could, and I would always tell her, like, Shayla, the thing is you keep coming back to God, which means that you are on the right path. Just keep going. And I know she would want me to keep going. So that was part of the reason why I wanted to record this episode, because she would, if she was here, she would be fussing if I didn't. If I didn't keep going with church girls. So I have to make sure that I keep going. And so the shift in my perspective when it comes to these circumstances has been, okay, I know that this is something that you have to do because, number one, it is something that God gave you. But number two, your friend would want you to do this. She supported it all along. So the support means that much more. As crazy as it sounds, it means that much more. Because now I feel like if I don't do it, she really gonna be side eyeing me for real. Like she's really gonna be side eyeing me. So um to keep from sitting here and crying anymore. Um if I could encourage anybody who is struggling with loss, I would say allow yourself to feel, give yourself some grace, but don't live in the heaviness of it all. Don't be weighed down by it for too long. Still trust God. Ask him all the questions because He understands. And keep moving. On those days when you feel like you can't move, pick up the phone and call somebody. Pray, call your therapist, reach out to your village because you're not by yourself. A friend of mine has started to, let me back up. She started off doing an event called Celebrate Still. She lost her mother years ago, but again, it doesn't make it any easier to deal with. And she wanted there to be a space, a safe space for people who still wanted to celebrate the loss of their mothers around that Mother's Day time, because typically there wasn't anything available like that for people who still wanted to celebrate. But it's grown into something bigger than that. And she has created a community for people who experience grief. I will link her information below because I think that it is extremely helpful to be able to talk to people who are experiencing some of the same things. She didn't ask me to do this, but I just feel like it's a great resource to have. One of the things that, the last thing I'll say is that I am grateful. I'm grateful to have known Shayla. I'm grateful to have had a consistent friend in Shayla. I'm grateful that God created her and our friendship. I'm grateful that I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for her. And I'm grateful that even in losing her, I still have that I'm still learning from her. Crazy enough. Um, it doesn't get much more sisterhood than that. It doesn't, if that even makes sense. But yeah, I'm grateful. And so, Shayla, girl, I know at this point you're probably like shaking your head at me, but I love you and I miss you. And yeah, this episode is dedicated to you. I hope that you all have a good one. And hopefully this episode helps somebody. Yeah. So have a good night. Because I'm recording this at night. Have a good day. By the time you see this episode tomorrow, I will be seeing my friend for the second to last time. Yeah. So y'all pray for me. And I will do the same for you. and I love you. And until next time, peace.